is coming out day, and so I wanted to share something because this day has a lot of relevance personally to me and to an awful lot of the LGBTQ plus community, if not all of us in some way, shape or form. I, unlike many, did not have a point where I suddenly realised that I was LGBTQ plus. There were a lot of points and a lot of signs, and then there was one moment which really drove me into thinking about it, but there wasn't a sudden realisation as such. Looking back on it, I probably first had a crush on a girl when I was about 4, but I didn't see it that way at the time, of course. And around the same age, I actually said, when I grow up, I want to marry a woman, which funnily enough wasn't even possible for LGBTQ plus couples at that time. But I said that, and at the time it was, my parents and everyone just thought it was, that thing little kids do where they kind of idolize their own gender. Well, who knows? In hindsight, I'm just saying. As time went on, if looking back, there were a lot of times where, I don't know, my friendships with girls would be more, like I would be really, really attached to them, or I would think they were really pretty, or I would really, really, really want to be friends with them, and that's just the way I saw it at the time because of society's cis heteronormativity, which really sucks, but yeah, that is what happened. And with hindsight, I don't know how I didn't know, but I didn't know. When I was 10 or 11, I developed a very close friendship with a girl at my school, and that was when I first actually, legitimately had the thought. I was like, wait a second, I've read about this, these really, really close friendships, so you get really attached, I must have read about it or heard about it somewhere, and I was like, wait a second, what if I kind of dismissed the thought at the time, and half pretended to myself that I had crushes on boys, and I don't believe they were real. I almost knew at the time I was lying to myself about them, but I didn't know why. And then when I was about 13, I think, I read a book called The Miseducation of Cameron Post. The main character is gay, and suddenly I was like, I really relate to this. And that was when I thought, shit. And I did think that because, society had taught me that, there's something lesser about this, there's something wrong about this. And so I boxed up all my doubt, my fear inside myself, and it was not a healthy thing, but that was all I knew how to do, was hide. And even when I started to, I got over my internalized homophobia and I was more comfortable with the idea, I still thought other people wouldn't be, and I still tortured myself with doubt because I kept thinking, what if this isn't real? And I didn't trust myself enough to know that what I was feeling was real. And so I shut it up inside myself. And that really took a toll on me and on my confidence at the time. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't done that so much to myself, but I did. And so it was quite a difficult and lonely time for me. The fact is, even though I was really very sure that my parents and most people in my life would be cool with it, I was still scared. I was scared of societal prejudice. I was scared of being seen as other, as alien, as different. And that is the reality that an awful lot of LGBTQ plus people go through, if not all of us, with the exception possibly of those who grow up in an already very queer family. And even so, it depends on your identity and your situation. I shut away a fundamental part of myself for a while. And when I was, pretty sure about it, I wasn't questioning it and doubting it, to myself anymore. I wasn't telling myself that it might not be real. Even when I had accepted that it was real, I was still scared and I hid. And I became good at lying about it. I became good at telling stories to explain away things I had done or said about my feelings. I dedicated a whole new Twitter account to engage in the LGBTQ plus community. And I made sure that and my main account, which my dad and my brother and various other people followed, never ever interacted. I did so many things to hide. I lied when I'd been on my phone and maybe I was watching videos like on Vice about questioning your sexuality or coming out or anything. I pretended so many things even after I was semi-out, because I was so afraid of being seen as that other. And that experience of having to look away a part of yourself, of having to become good at lying to those you love because you're afraid, is, I think, a part of the LGBTQ plus experience which cis-het people are never going to understand at all. And it's horrible that so many of us have been in that position, even those of us with accepting families, even those of us who are in a very privileged position in that we live in countries where it's legal and we can have pride parades in the street and that's okay, and that where we're quite lucky in terms of rights, although we still have a long way to go. Even those of us who live like that still have to go through that and still have to struggle with that, not to mention the appalling struggles faced by people who come from non-accepting families or from countries where they're not allowed to be who they are. So it's completely unacceptable and it has to change. And so if you've got that far, if you're LGBTQ plus and you have figured out your sexuality or gender identity, even if you've just figured out that you're not straight or you're not cisgender, then I am so proud of you, because it takes a lot to even get to that point. It took a lot for me to get to the point where I could even accept myself that this is who I am. And then we move on to the next part, which is what today is really about, which is coming out. And that's a whole other journey, but they're very much linked, because I feel like finally accepting who you are is coming out to yourself, really. And that is definitely a crucial part of the journey of coming out. We always talk about coming out to your parents or your friends or your family, but actually you've got to come out to yourself first. So my coming out journey started on an evening in December 2019. Before that, all I'd ever said was I wasn't sure, but I thought I was straight because I was covering up, of course. On this evening, I told my mum and my little brother that I was sort of, more seriously questioning. Little did I know that that day would turn into a day of very awkward coming out all around. So, later that night, I managed to hide my phone in my room, because I'm not usually allowed my phone in my room at night because of my mom. So anyway, that's another story. And I used it to watch videos of other people coming out so that I could, get some tips, basically. After doing that, I started to feel kind of inspired. So after a few tries, I stuck a rainbow flag in my Twitter name and I wrote a tweet which said, I put that little rainbow flag in my bio because I'm not sure what I am, but I'm pretty sure I'm not straight, or something like that. And I sent that tweet to my dad at first after several tries for a message, which was pretty basic, just I think I'm rainbow flag, and then various other messages. In the end, I deleted them all and just shared the tweet with him. And so that was the beginning of that. And then, when I put my phone away, my mum came up and was like, were you on your phone? And I'm so bad at lying. So about many things, I was able to lie about my sexuality, but that was like such a self-preservation thing that I had to. But when it came to this, I couldn't lie. So I was like, yeah, for a little bit. And then she was like, why? And I was like, well, yeah, there are just a few things. And somehow, I don't know, I ended up saying, yeah, there's just a thing which you don't know about, which, yeah. And then she was like, oh, I really think you should tell me now, because otherwise I'm just going to be wondering what it is. And I'm sure it would get it off your chest. And in that way, unintentionally made me out myself as questioning. So that was kind of awkward. And that was the beginning of my coming out story. After that, I tried to basically pretend that nothing had changed. I didn't talk about it. I felt embarrassed, not because of who I was, but because I thought they would be looking at me differently, and because, it's never easy telling your parents effectively, who you want to date, right? So, yeah, that was a very awkward period because I was out, but I sort of did everything to pretend I wasn't. And yeah, so that was quite difficult. And then February came, which was also LGBTQ plus History Month. And I decided to properly come out to my mom. Between I come out to like the odd friend, and I was obviously out on Twitter at that time. I wrote her a whole long letter saying, I'm not sure exactly what I am, but I know I am queer. And I made a whole load of points like, I don't think this is a phase. I'm really sure this isn't a phase, but even if it were a phase, it's still valid. Yeah, so I wrote this whole long letter to her, and I left it on her bed. Shot myself in my room. I was shaking. As soon as I knew she went in there, I went downstairs. I spent a really long time drinking a glass of water. And finally, when I came back up, and she came to me and she was like, it doesn't change anything. I don't know exactly what she said. And she hugged me. She said, I just don't want you to be unhappy or worried about this. So yeah, that was quite a non-event given that I was so stressed. And I think that happens very often. But obviously it's because you're bearing this part of your heart, and it did feel like a more proper coming out than my previous one. So that happened then. I briefly mentioned this on Twitter, but I was again still quite awkward about it, and it did take me quite a while to be more comfortable with myself. As time went on, I started to be more confident on Twitter, although I was still a little awkward because my brothers didn't know yet, and my brother was following me on Twitter. And around this time, I also made some amazing friends, and I was really finally able to be really, truly open with people. And I was like, wow, I can actually be myself without having to hide at all, because I could be really, really open with these people, and it was amazing. And then I made a TikTok video for Ida Hobbit, which stands for International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia. And I had made a video talking about coming to terms with my sexuality, not actually talking, doing a weird TikTok dance with captions, but and I decided to share that on Twitter on Ida Hobbit because it was sort of relevant. And there was no stress for a while. And then my brother must have come back on to Twitter after a break for a while, a few days after, and it either must have showed up in his timeline, or he somehow came across it, and so he started listening, watching it, listening to it. Yeah, this was 2 days after I made the actual video, and as soon as I heard the strings of the song that I put to it, a song called Queer Girls, I ran upstairs because I was scared, and I shut myself in my room. But I still heard my brother say, Grace just came out as gay. It was like laughing. And I know he was sort of, he wasn't being really horrible, but I felt awkward, and it felt kind of horrible right then. And yeah, but then I was out. And even though it was scary that first day, and I was nervous, and I thought maybe they saw me differently, my brothers, because he told my other brother, which by the way you should not do, you should not tell anyone else if you find something out inadvertently, but anyway. So then I was out, and within a few days it was good. So even though I didn't want to be outed that way, it did end up being kind of a good thing, because I was finally open, because I knew there was no one I really had to hide from anymore. No one, in fact. There were some people I hadn't overtly told, but I didn't care if they found out. And that was really freeing, and I was finally myself. And after that, I was just so much more open all round, until I got to the point where I am today, where I will post gay shit all over my Twitter account, my WhatsApp status. I will talk about it with my family. I asked for badges saying queer as fuck for my birthday, and a pride flag. I don't have a pride flag, by the way. I wish I did, otherwise I would have it. If I did, I would have it here. But anyway, and doing these things which I would not have been able to do just a few months ago. And it's been quite a ride. But I am so grateful that I was able to get to the point I am today, where I am proud to be me, I am out, and I am never going back. I am actually me now, and I know that when I'm talking to people, they're talking to, in many ways, at least as regards my sexuality, the real me, and that is amazing. My advice to anyone who is thinking of coming out is that it's always your own choice, when and even if. if somebody outs you, that is completely not okay, and you absolutely have a right to challenge it. In fact, it is considered abusive behaviour, and if it's in, for example, a school university setting, you can report it. But yeah, when you actually want to come out, it is your choice when, it is your choice how, and it is your choice who to. And it is your choice if. Some people never come out. Some people don't have a real coming out moment, they just sort of start living as themselves. Some people don't want to, some people can't, but if you do want to, choose, you choose when. It can be impromptu or you can plan it. You can write a note, you can text, you can email, you can put it on Twitter or some other social media, you can just have a face-to-face conversation. Yeah, it's your choice who to. Maybe only your parents and a few close friends will ever know. Maybe it will only be, people you really feel you can trust. Make sure that you do, first of all, tell people you can trust, because you don't want to have your first coming out experience be a really bad one. It is also your choice how, you can do it any way you want, within reason, obviously. It's best not to be super, super dramatic. You don't want to, spray paint the words "I'm gay" on the outside of your house, because I have a feeling that wouldn't go down very well with whoever lives in your house with you. But you can, within reason, do it however you want. Don't be too dramatic. Yeah, that's probably a good thing. If you don't want to be there when they react, which for me I didn't really, because in that immediate moment of reaction, kind of scary, or if you don't feel you have the confidence to have a face-to-face conversation, then you can write a note, or you can send a text, or an email, or a tweet, or a Facebook post, or anything like that. And yeah, I think that's a really important thing, that you have the option, you do have the option of not being there and not having that typical conversation from all the books and movies, right? What's more advice? Remember that this is not a choice, this is not your fault, this is just how you are. If you believe in a deity as a creator, then they are who made you how you are. And if you don't, if you just think it's science, then that made you how you are, and you didn't choose this, and there is nothing wrong with you. If someone reacts badly, that is entirely their problem. It is not your fault. It is not you. It is not you. It is not you. You are just right how you are, and that is their fault for being small-minded and bigoted. Some people will react badly and then will come around. And so don't assume that just because someone initially reacts badly, which of course they should never do anyway, that they're always going to be the same about it, because some people need a bit of time to adjust. And although I would argue that they shouldn't need time to adjust because this is just who you are, if they do, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to always be awkward, bad, difficult, or downright horrible about your sexuality or gender identity or whatever else you're coming at as. So basically, good luck if you are coming out, or whatever, and always remember that you are just right and there is nothing wrong with you. Where the wrongness lies is in society's bigotry and in hate, and that is not you. Our love is just as valid as anybody else's, and in the cases of gender diverse or trans people, your gender is completely obviously valid, and how could anyone else know your gender or sexuality better than you? It's nonsense. Okay, you know yourself and you know who you are, and don't doubt yourself too much, because this is real. This is not a phase. This is you, and that is valid. And frankly, you deserve to have everyone react well. I look forward to a day when no one has to specifically come out. It's just that they are who they are. And we don't have to stand up and declare that we're different because we aren't seen as something other. That we have our own identities and communities because that's really important, but that everyone just sees us as human, just like anyone else, because we are. And a day when we can just be happy. We don't have to be labelled, obviously you can use a label, which is good for you, but people don't look at us and think, oh, they're gay, bi, trans, etc., etc. They just look and think they're human and they're happy.